Welcome back. In this video, I will be giving you the top 5 running backs in football, and in my next several videos, I will be giving you the top fantasy sleepers at every position and which sleepers you should choose for your fantasy team. So let's start. The first running back to be drafted off all fantasy boards this season should be Chris Johnson of the Tennessee Titans. Johnson is coming off one of the best seasons ever by a running back. He gained an NFL record 2,509 yards from scrimmage and scored 16 touchdowns. Not surprisingly, he was the leading scorer in fantasy football, finishing just ahead of quarterback Aaron Rodgers on NFL.com, Yahoo, CBS, and ESPN. He is young, explosive, versatile, has blazing speed, and is one of the few future backs left in the league. Johnson fumbled the ball only 3 times last year while leading the NFL with 97 first downs. He ran for over 100 yards in 11 consecutive games and scored 1 or more touchdowns in 8 of the Titans' 16 games. Chris averaged 5.6 yards per carry last season, and with LenDale White now gone to the Seahawks, expect Johnson to get even more carries with close to 20 touches a game. While he will be hard-pressed to reach last season's totals again, he will still be ultra-productive and will be the consensus #1 pick in 2010 fantasy drafts. The second running back off the board should be Adrian Peterson of the Minnesota Vikings. Why wouldn't you want AP on your fantasy team? Last season, he ran for 1,383 yards and scored 18 touchdowns, while scoring 1 or more touchdowns in 12 of the Vikings' 16 games. He also had 436 receiving yards to add to his fantasy numbers. In his first 3 seasons with the Vikings, Peterson has never failed to top 1,300 yards and has averaged 13 touchdowns per season. He figures to be a bigger part of the passing game in 2010 now that running back Chester Taylor has signed with Chicago. The Vikings replaced Taylor by drafting Toby Gerhart in the second round, and he could steal some goal line carries, but will not come anywhere near the 44 receptions that Taylor hauled in last season. Peterson's touchdown totals and his overall ability make him a no-doubt #1 fantasy rusher heading into the fall and a top 3 overall pick. He's still among the best players at his position. The third running back off the board should be Maurice Jones-Drew of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jones-Drew is still considered a top 3 fantasy back. He set career highs in many categories, including carries, yards, and rushing touchdowns, and while his receiving stats didn't improve like his rushing stats, they were still pretty solid. Jones-Drew rushed for 1,392 yards last year on 312 carries and ran for 15 touchdowns. Jones-Drew caught the second most receptions of his career with 53, but he had his lowest receiving yards total of his career, 374, and 1 receiving touchdown. Jones-Drew scored at least 1 touchdown in 10 of the Jaguars' 16 games and actually improved his per-carry average from 4.2 in his final year as a tandem back with Fred Taylor to 4.5 in 2009. He led the league in red zone carries last season and was 3rd in carries inside the 10 and inside the 5. In short, Jones-Drew is young, durable, and very consistent and will be a fantasy stud for years to come. He is an every down back for the Jags, and his receiving stats just add to his already impressive rushing stats in any format. The next running back off the board should be Ray Rice of the Baltimore Ravens. In 2009, Ray Rice passed Willis McGahee and Ramon LeClain on the Ravens depth chart and thrived in a more prominent role, posting 14 or more fantasy points 9 times in his final 13 games. Rice totaled 1,339 rushing yards on 254 carries with 7 touchdowns and 702 receiving yards on 78 catches and another score. That's a total of 2,041 yards on 332 touches with just 3 fumbles lost. He added 2 more touchdowns in the postseason with 226 rushing yards and 60 receiving yards. Considering that he shared the ball with Willis McGahee for much of the season, especially inside the 5-yard line, Rice's totals are outstanding. The Ravens are expected to continue splitting reps between Rice and McGahee, and many owners are concerned that an improved receiving corps could take receiving totals away from Rice, but the reality is that Rice is the only guy on the team with 20 touch potential from week to week. He's a clinch as a #1 fantasy running back, likely going somewhere between 4th and 6th overall in all leagues this summer. The last running back to be drafted in the top 5 should be Frank Gore of the San Francisco 49ers. Frank Gore continues to be one of the best fantasy running backs available, and he should be considered a first-round pick in all leagues. Gore had at least 1,400 yards in each of the past 4 seasons, and in 2009 he set a new career high with 10 rushing touchdowns and 13 overall. Gore scored at least 1 touchdown in 8 of the 14 games he played for the 49ers. He's also a great receiver out of the backfield, with more than 50 catches in 3 of the past 4 years, and is a rare running back who still continues to get the majority of the touches out of the backfield. He will lose a few carries to Glenn Coffey and rookie Anthony Dixon, but Gore is still an outstanding running back. He did miss 2 games last year with an ankle injury and has missed 5 games in the past 3 seasons, but he's also averaged 233 carries a year for his career. Expect Gore to be drafted towards the end of the first round in all leagues.